Welcome to the In Peace We Rest podcast, everybody. We are woo. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know when this episode is coming out, but at the time of this recording, it is the first week of the new year, 2025. Like, can we all breathe deeply into 2025 for a minute?
We made it. Whatever that means.
Isn't it interesting how I feel like we all so look forward to the holiday season, right? The hustle and bustle, the connectedness, the family. And it is also so incredibly busy that I don't know about you guys. Some years I feel like I need a vacation from my vacation, holiday from a holiday. Um, and so what today's Friday, I think it felt like a Monday for me. It felt like a Monday for me. But I know that we all had a lot that happened over the holiday season, a lot of beautiful insights and awarenesses and questions that came up for us over the holidays that I'm excited for us to get into today. Before we do though, Jasmine, would you mind dropping this in, see what the oracles have to say for us today?
Yeah, I just will invite everyone who is listening to just kind of close their eyes for a second. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while, we kind of drop in and we just take a few nice deep breaths in. Really, I always like to say, like, find your ass where you're sitting. Like, just find awareness of where your body actually is. And I know that sounds silly, but just take a minute to find where you're sitting at, find what you're leaning at, find your edges. A way that we haven't necessarily dropped in before is to read a card. And before we started recording, I pulled a card for us. In fact, we've been doing a lot of work lately and a lot of card pulling, and this card deck is just on fire. And so I pulled the card for today when we were already chatting. Everyone was already kind of talking, and I want to anchor us into this mindset, this thought. Sometimes we can anchor into meditation, but we can anchor into a awareness point or an observation point. And for today, that is this creating family balance, maintaining the balance between giving love, nurturing, and caring attention to your family and keeping it for yourself is vital in continuing healthiness for yourself and well-being for yourself, but also for those around us. The energy is required for our inner journey. So when we are creating balance and when we are finding this connection with our own self, and you go down this path, sometimes you can go through these different experiences where your family can get hard. It can get harder with your family, and it can get more complicated with your family. And we go through these ebbs and flows, and we feel like as soon as we have this moment of clarity and this moment of goodness, sometimes we can hang on to that so tightly, and we can just be striving for it all the time. And what the journey is letting go and surrendering and allowing for this flow of a lot of connection and a little connection, of a lot of talking and a little talking, of arguments even, and then peace. And when we really do live in that flow state, that's what we're doing. We are observing. When we think of balance, the most balanced thing you can do is observe and move when you need to. And also in true fashion, when we're recording this video, it's winter, and I'm certain that it will be released and it will probably still be winter. But how do we allow the flow and the observation? And I feel, as everyone was chatting before, I was like, okay, stop, everyone, let's just hit record. And so I would want to offer what is that definition of balance first? And what is a story that we each have in finding balance that either feels really good or was an experience that didn't feel good either?
I love this question. I love this question because I feel like this has been so much my life's journey up to this point is finding this elusive balance, right? If I could just find balance across my life, all things, then I'd be happy or I would be at peace. And balance is a lie, I feel like. True balance to be able to give equal attention, effort, passion, and intention to all of these different things that we find ourselves pulled by or attracted to. That is an unrealistic expectation I have found for myself. Um, I and then I thought, well, maybe I can just be like a give or take, right? Like maybe some days I need to be more dedicated to my job and less dedicated to my family, and then I can compensate later. However, I never really fully allowed myself to be in it when I was in it and then feeling guilt about the things that I wasn't in. And I feel like every human, like regardless if you're a mom or a dad, committed, single, a parent or not, we have so many different things that pull our awareness, our attention, because these are either things that we want, things that we've told ourselves that we need or that we should be based on the roles that we're playing in our life. And I feel like so many of us walk through life trying to play these roles, trying to fulfill everything that this role is, what we think it is, based off of whatever definition and how we derived that. And we run ourselves ragged and we feel like we're failing 100% of the time. And that's exhausting. It truly, truly, truly is exhausting. And for me, I found that true balance can be achieved if you're trying to do everything all by yourself. I think that was
And I
something
think,
that I started to. Go ahead, Jerry.
yeah, I think, and I think a good way to look at this is it's the balance. It's the balance in the awareness. It's not being in the happy or being in the sad. It's just being aware of both. Like, and you don't have to control the happy. You don't have to control the sad. But if you're just simply aware of it, that's where that true balance, I think, really comes into play. And if you can just sit in that space and not have to like fix and go and do and just be, that's where you're truly able to balance, right? And I think when we're always like in the future or in the past, that balance can't exist because you're leaning one way, right? And if you can just be, that's why meditation's so important. And that's why like sitting with yourself and holding space holds so much value for us, because I think that's the space that we actually do get a little bit of balance because we're giving us a chance to breathe. And that's why it feels the way it does. Um, for me, like I know like in grief, it's been a lot about trying to understand how to end the grief, how to control the grief. And I've had to learn with grief that grief is definitely a balance thing. It's about understanding like the part that's really hard and then the part that's really beautiful about like losing something that we love. And so yeah, I think the balance piece just really, it's something that's really subtle and it's something that we have to hold space for. And once you do, it will start to balance. But when you're leaning one way or the other, you're literally not balanced, right? Because you're leaning into it, you're leaning away from it. Um, but yeah, it's so beautiful when we can find that balance, because then that's when like the answers come. That's when the clarity comes. That's when that inner peace can begin to happen. And it's like, man, I just want to share this with everybody, right? We want to share it with our families. We want to share it with our loved ones. We want to share it with our friends, because when we get into these spaces, and we've all been in the spaces where it's really hard and really tough, but when we get in this space of peace, man, we just want to share that. And we have to share both. We have to share the whole idea and the whole experience. And that's why it can be really hard. And even though these are the people that we love and that we care about, we have to really give them the opportunity to learn it on their own and hold space for it and just invite them into that awareness of where they want to go with it. Um, and I think that's the key to it, is just how do we show people that they can find balance just by being aware of it, just by knowing that it exists, and that's enough.
Jerry, I have questions. I have questions. Sorry. Can I go?
Jeez.
So before, I feel there's some important information that maybe the listeners don't have about. I want to go deeper into what you're talking about. And so I'm going to invite or open if you want to talk about it. What is happening in your home life that's making you speak so much about, I want them to feel, I want, like, can we talk a little bit more about the desire to get people to see meditation and that's showing up in your life right now?
Yeah. Yeah, so, I have 5 kids. They're all teenager to adult. They're all, like, trying to figure it out, right? They're all in that space of what am I gonna be? What am I gonna become? What am I trying to create? And we're really just trying to hold space for that and let them really figure that out on their own. But also we have what we know and what we've learned. And, and a lot of times like we get really excited and we want to like show them and like, hey, if it's so awesome because you get this information now. And being teenagers, that a lot of times falls on deaf ears, right? Or it falls, they're not ready for it, right? And we have to remind ourselves, like, man, what was it like when I was a teenager? The last person I wanted to listen to is my mom, right? The last person I want to listen to as an adult. And so, but we have to remember that also. But it's like we learn these new modalities and these new things, and we want to really hand them off to our loved ones and give them this gift because of what we know that it holds for ourselves. And man, that's so hard sometimes, right? Like the few people that I want to come to my class are the ones that don't because for whatever reason, they're just not ready, right? And I have to hold that in my heart and go, you know what? They're not ready, and I can't take that personally. And a lot of times, it's so much even harder with our own kids because you're so connected. You're such a part of them, and and then how much of their time do you really control, right? As a parent, and what does that mean? Because like for us and our family, we have a split family. And so, 2 of our kids go to their mom and the other 3 girls go to their dad. And like there's, different timelines and different ideas of what parenting looks like. And and like all we want to do is be able to give them this new idea and this new way to be and to exist in that it doesn't have to be the old way, right? We can change it and it is changing, but how do we get them to get on board with that, right? And the reality is like all you can do is show them, right? All and that's where that awareness comes in for us is like all I can do is make my kids aware that this is a way that they could choose, right? This is a possibility. This is a path. This is a river. This is whatever, right? This could be a journey that you choose if you would like. And all I can do is say that it's brought me this experience. It's brought me this sadness. It's brought me this happiness. And it just allow them to see the full truth in what I'm experiencing. And not get frustrated, right, when they don't listen, or not get frustrated when they won't come to meditation class with you, or when they won't even take out the garbage, right? Just whatever it is, it's so hard in the family units because there's so many pieces moving, so much going on. And as parents, we want the best for our kids. We want like the best, like we don't want them to see them struggle. But the reality is they're going to struggle. And the reality is you just have to hold space for that and be there for them and allow them to like really find their own way because that and it's so important. It's such an important thing, and I think all we can do is really show them everything that they are, all their gifts, all their true magic that's in each one of them. Try to show them that piece, right? Try to show your kids like the things that create them, right? What's their magic? What's their astrology look like? What's their human design? What are these little pieces that kind of give them a little bit more about their personality? Cause like I know when I've like studied in mine, it's given me this like ability to kind of like just like feel like a more at peace with where I am at the place in my life, like where I exist having like a little bit extra guidance and like a little bit extra of like this is what makes you and then studying things like past life regression I mean there's so much you can get into to learn, but just really showing them that all these things are possible and then holding space for it and not getting frustrated when they don't jump on board and they're not meditating with you or they're not doing other things. It's not being let down, but just being proud of the fact that I led them to water, right? I gave them this opportunity to see this path. And like that's all we can do. It's up to them to make that choice. And I think holding that space for them is so valuable because that's where they're going to start to trust you. And I think a lot of the times too is like the proof's in the pudding, right? Like or like the more I'm doing it, like when I sit and I meditate, my kids see that. When I sit and I have breath work and I'm doing my own routines, my kids see that. Which makes them want to know why I'm doing it. And I think the more that you can give your kids that space of observing you doing what makes you happy, it's just going to make them that little bit more interested in coming on board with this kind of stuff. And that's just like for me and Jenny, it's like that brutal honesty. Like we're going to tell you everything that's great, but we're also going to tell you everything that sucks. And we're going to try to give you everything that you have and all the cards that you need so that when you go to make a decision, it's your best decision.
Yeah, that's a lot. It feels, something that has been showing up in in my life recently is this sort of dedication to discovering like this unchangeable truth. Like when we take all of these like balance to me is this open, like a better, I always whenever I think of words, whenever I think of situations or experiences, I'm always looking for like a movement of the word and something that I like as I was listening to both of you speak about it, like this movement of the word balance is is in a way a controlling word, right? And when we say the word balance, we're wanting it to say this is this. And ultimately, well, what of that can be true? And when we go into this idea of this truth, the truth is awareness. And I don't want that word awareness to get mixed into all the things that we're saying. I feel like that word is really super duper important is the best thing that you can ever do, the way that you find balance is awareness. If you're not aware of what's really happening, if you're not aware and observing situations with your family, with yourself, if you're not able to even pull out of that, you know, conditioned way of being, if you're not able to pull out of that ego response, both of those things are so lovely. Both of those things served you at some point, but as you start to kind of fill yourself back up a little bit and really observe and see, well, what is the conditioned response? What is the thing that I'm striving for? What is the movement that I'm trying to make? Because when we're standing still, we're balanced. As we get going forward, that's when we get like as we start movement, that's where the balance bit gets a little rough. So taking that time and being within yourself and saying, okay, what is it? What am I observing around me? And how can I see this unfolding? And I don't even want to say, excuse me, as soon as I started to say that, I was like, well, that's not really how I want to say that either. It is that I think the only way that I feel balance in my body is when I'm able to observe without judgment. And I'm not trying to do anything. I'm just simply watching it happen. And in situations where you do have kids, I have kids too, and I have an other family. I have a bio mom who's amazing. That's something that I really try to show my kids is when you can just simply be and observe, your true self shows up. It's not something that you have to hunt for. It's not something that you have to do or be or understand about yourself. Everything that we're doing here, everything that we're talking about is just trying to help you find awareness. And that for me is this deeper meaning of when we when we release the things that blind us, when we release the shiny objects, when we release the desires for someone else, and we start to observe them as if they are mirrors for ourselves, and we start to see, I desire that so much for me. I have this extreme passion for me. Then we start to open our heart and we start to really find a different definition of balance, and that is that open version of balance and not the control version of balance, where we let go of good or bad. We let go of the crazy stories from 30 years ago. And we talk about craziness of the holidays. I feel like this is probably my most insane holiday season ever. And it has nothing to do with Christmas, nothing to do with New Year's. It had to do with the fact that, I really saw my parents for the first time ever. I saw them in their rawness, and it was all because I wasn't trying to find balance. I wasn't trying to control. I wasn't trying to be anything other than in the moment and in the experience, and um not even trying to describe it. Just simply allowing it to happen. And I feel, I don't know, that's my little bit. That's what I want to share, because the ego, the mind, these things can be tricky because they can distract us as well from the balance within our own self.
Yeah, I love that you said that. I feel I had so many things come up while both of you guys were talking. The first thing I love when you speak about the movement of the word balance is I really sit with that for myself. Jasmine, I know you and I have kind of talked about this idea of a tornado, right? The energy that's within us versus the energy that is outside of us. And when what's happening around me is matching what's inside of me, that's when I feel balance. That's when I feel at peace. That's when I feel like I have the capacity to simply observe.
Mm.
And what I love about this awareness piece, I think it's interesting because when we first started talking about this, right? Balance, we have balance of task and we have balance of emotions. And when we are in survival mode, right, we're usually hyper focused on the task, the roles, the human expectations that we have. And oftentimes we don't allow ourselves to feel. We don't allow ourselves to hold space for and be aware of what those emotions are, right? And then once that does come up for us, more often than not, right, we allow the pendulum to swing in the extreme opposite direction, right? Like right now, all I can do is feel. I'll like screw everything that is holding me back from honoring my truth and myself, right? And we're going to let all human responsibility and obligation melt away. And I am the only thing that matters in this moment. And it's beautiful to watch that pendulum swing, especially for myself. I've definitely observed myself swing from one extreme to the next. And I feel like I'm starting to settle somewhere in the middle. Um, and I feel you when you talk about this judgment piece, right? If I am really feeling this need to push, whether that's myself, my family, my friends, my coworkers, if there's that need to push, I always really try to hold awareness of, all right, what's coming up for me? What is the judgment that I'm having on myself? Why is it that I need this so badly? What story is that connected to? And is it even true anymore?
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yes. And when we can when when you feel yourself be so something, like when you feel that sensation so much that you're trying to push it or project it or move it outside of you, for me, that is always the first sign of unbalance, because that means I'm trying to control outside of me. And that has been such an incredible journey to go on to, you know, I grew up where controlling yourself, and that was the way to be. That was peace because you were in control. And when you surrender to the fact that this experience that we're having is just play, and you get to be in all these different roles, you get to experience all these different things. The weight goes off, and then we're not unbalance for me always comes from projection outside of myself. If I am living and projecting something outside of me, I am always out of balance because I'm not aware, because I'm not observing, I'm not looking. I'm and that it's not bad. It's not bad to be in that place. It's just is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like it's so interesting when we talk about boundaries with family specifically, right? Because so many of the stories that we've told, we adapted from family. And so when we start to have new awarenesses for ourselves and unraveling of that truth, right? Oftentimes it can build resentment amongst family. And we oftentimes we believe that in order for us to change, they have to change too. And so that's where that push comes in, right? Like I need you to do to validate and not only validate what I'm doing, but give me permission to keep going. Because there is this giant risk that we all feel inherently that if I go against the tribe, I will be cast out.
Right? How hard is it when we change traditions? Right? And like how like traditions have to change. Like, but like how tied are we to those? Right? And how tied are our parents and our families and our kids? And like then what those traditions specifically are tied to. That's another thing that I've been dealing with a lot lately. Like, why are we celebrating this? Like, and I think our society has too, right? Like, why do we celebrate these celebrations? And like we've kind of lost track of the meanings. We've kind of lost track of like what it really is about. And yeah, that can be difficult, right? That can be so hard with the family elements because then it's like, yeah, what's our tradition? What are we supposed to be doing? What are we supposed to be celebrating? Because everything our ancestors taught us, they taught us, to stick to tradition. But everything that our gut's telling us is tradition needs to change. And so, and then yeah, then how do you incorporate that into the family unit? Right? Where it's easy for me to do it, but then how do you get it to where everybody else that's around you also feels that same kind of need for growth, right? And then trying to get your family to be on board with that, whether it's your immediate family, your extended family, and then to make it all conclusive, all in one thing, and with all the different beliefs and all the different elements of everybody, and I mean, it's so overwhelming, and yeah, that's where it's so important to go to that space, right? Go to that space and not trying to figure it out, just be with it. Just sit with it and like let your body, let the emotions that your body's trying to express to you, let them speak to you and just be with it. Let those feelings guide you. That right? Let them show you your answers because they're there. It's just like we say, you got to get out of your own way a little bit. You got to sit with it. You've got to be able to understand it, and that's giving that chance for that awareness that we're talking about. That we're just getting to that doorstep to where the awareness could even start to slowly come in. Um, but yeah, we've got to make time for that, and we have to give back to ourselves to allow that to even happen. And it does start with us, but man, how complicated does it get when we start talking about our families and then what we want to project to our kids and then what kind of story we want to tell, and then what kind of legacy do we want to have? I mean, holy cow, like that's a lot. And how much of that do we put on ourselves? And how much stress and how much energy and how much time do we put in that where we could really kind of like direct it into a healthier space? And that's really all we're trying to do, right? We're trying to get into that so that these thoughts, whether they're bad or negative or whatever, like we can actually direct them into a healthy space to where we can start to grow. We can start to change these traditions. We can start to like, encourage our family members to really see that this is good for you, right? This is going to make you a better person. This is going to make you feel whole, right? Where we get so busy and we get so tied up in everything that's going on and everybody else's game that we kind of forget about that gift that we got to give back to ourselves. And that's the gift of time, right? That human being, like we need to have more of that.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you spoke to this idea of time because I feel like so much of the answer to all of these questions is to be present, right? Like be here now in this moment. There's nothing we can do about what has already happened. The future is so far away. It's being formed by what we're doing right now. So if I'm having full and total awareness of myself right now, am I in love or am I in fear?
Mm-hmm. That question.
What if you're in fear of being in love?
And you're in fear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Or are you in love?
Uh-uh. You're in fear. You're in fear when you. I don't want to cut off your point. I really want to see where that's going. See.
You're good. I'll keep it.
I really love that you brought up this question of, are you in fear or are you in love? Because so often when we project outside of ourselves is because we are in fear that love will not be. We are in fear that we are separate. There is so much fear that happens. One of my great teachers is always speaking to me about this idea of, if it's not love, it's fear. If it's not love, it's fear. And I'm not gonna be like, "Oh, I just immediately accepted this as truth." I'm not even gonna say that I'm at this place of that is truth right now, but I am playing with it, and I have not found a situation where she was incorrect, and where that idea didn't end up serving me in the end, to really, really discover what if it is not love, then it is fear, and then you get to go down this really exciting rabbit hole of, "Whoa, what am I afraid of?" And then we go down into this place of creating stories, and I love stories. I think stories are great, but stories are stories, and they are not truth either, because they are a projection of our fear. They are not love, because they are not true, and they can be stripped away. Like, everything that so much of who we are can be stripped away, because it is an experience. It's something that we're putting on. And that's where I feel like it is important. Tying this back to balance, and why we're even here in this conversation, is because we're trying to find balance. And we are balance. In our purest, truest essence, we are balance, because we are everything. And it is the projections of ourselves. It's the projections of fear and stories that are creating this unbalancedness. That even the idea of growth and change and being better and being different, those are all projections as well. And that blows my mind and fascinates me all at the same time, and then also is like, well, then what the hell? Then you can kind of go into the space of existential crisis if you don't realize that the fun of it all is that we're here to play. We're here to play and experience different things. And um, who am I to say that my story is right or wrong or better or worse? All I can say, like Jerry was getting to, is all I can say is that this is what worked for me. And I love it so much that I want to share it with you, but it's not for me to tell you that you have to pick it up, because who am I? I don't know. Like, this is just what works for me. And yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's so hard with our kids, right? Because we're so attached to them. We are so like, we just want you to be the best version of who you can be, and that's why it's so hard with them. Is because we have so much love for them, and we want to see them just, we don't want to see them struggle, right? Nobody wants to see their kids struggle, and so it's like, yeah, how do you really hold space, and even in their struggle, because they're going to, right? That's going to happen. We're going to struggle, but we're also going to find happiness. And it's again, and I think that's where that balance piece, right? That awareness really gives you that gratitude. Okay. Oh yeah, you're right. It is a balance. It does swing both ways. And it's just being able to recognize it when you are far right, that you can actually swing a little bit more to the left, whatever the case is, right? Just having that ability to just, yeah, be aware. I don't know why I keep saying that, but it's so easy once you get to it. But it's so hard to find the time to create that balance, right? And I think that's what most people struggle is I don't have time for that because everything else is already throwing me out of balance. How do I? But it's kind of funny, right? Because that's the answer. The answer is to stop doing and stop trying to figure it out. But it feels like when you're in that space, that feels so hard to do. It feels so hard to do, even though that's actually your answer.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you spoke to that because I started to touch on this early on, but this idea that we can't do it all by ourselves. And so many of us hold this belief, whether you're task oriented, emotion oriented, healing oriented, whatever that is, it takes a village for literally everything. We cannot do it alone. And what's hard about that is to ask for help, to lean on others is vulnerability, right? There is that fear of rejection, of losing the love, of being hurt. And I have found that it isn't until I have really allowed myself to be vulnerable, to open to the support around me, of family, of friends, of the collective, to say, hey, I'm really struggling. Can you hold space for me in this to help me figure it out? And oftentimes, nobody gives me answers. Nobody gives me answers. I always find the answers. However, they're there for the support. They can help move pieces around me to help me find balance within myself so that I can come back more balanced, and it radiates outside of ourselves.
And isn't it funny, like us being the teachers, right? It's so hard to ask sometimes. It's so hard. And that's where I have to think back with my kids. All right, remember how hard it is for me to ask. And I have all these answers and like, so imagine, and you got to put yourself in their shoes. How hard is it for them to ask?
Mhm.
Right? I mean, how it took me 48 years to find the courage, right? To really be emotional and to really like let people see who I am and not feel bad about what they might expect, right? That's not what it's about. It's about how I feel and how genuine I can be in my actions. And then just letting that evolve, just letting that just be and not worried about what everybody else is thinking, right? Because that's where it slows us down. That usually is what like kind of like, because I know my kids, man, they're all so worried about what everybody thinks, right? Teenagers, man. And didn't we all?
Yeah.
How hard is it? Like, because the judgments are there. They're there. So it's like, how do you deal with that? How do you let them really sink into your heart and you take them personal, or do you let them bounce off? And the answer is probably both. But how do you deal with it? And where do you find time to sit and know that those things that you're feeling aren't personal?
Yeah.
You know,
You can go ahead, Jocelyn, if you had a thought.
no, I was just agreeing. I feel the balance. If you wanna, and I missed a minute. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had to use the ladies' room. I drank a lot of water today, and I was like, oh man, I gotta go. But the this thought that was was kind of formulating as I popped out and as I was listening to you guys earlier was this, you know, this play of like conditions and conditional love and unconditional love and how we get there because ultimately balance comes into play because we feel like something is not balanced and that's always really fun like we create an idea and a word to describe a sensation that we're having but when we go back to ourselves and back to oneness the questions become obsolete. Like, the questions I love so dearly become obsolete. Questions like, "Okay, my kid is now having hormones and now is having to deal with the fact that he maybe smells different than other people, and that's freaking fun for him, and I have this wisdom that I wanna share to make it better for him, but that's because I have a conditioned response that it even needs to be different in the first place." And so finding that for me, I feel this parenting bit is this finding balance between what I would call like the human world, like the society that we fit into. I hope for my kids to not experience exile from a society because that's not joy experience. And I always say I want my kids to be good members of society, and that's my hope to teach them but what does good even mean? Because I have all these conditioned experiences over and it gets I feel like it gets worse as we go on. People who are starting a spiritual journey so early on in their life, they don't get so much conditioned response because they don't hang on to the conditions as much as we do and as much as our parents did. They just never get stuck in the first place. And I feel That's balance. Balance is not keeping something stuck. When we can surrender and we can allow it to flow through us in awareness and observation, when we can allow that to happen, we don't get hung up on the stupid shit anymore. We don't get hung up on, oh, did I wrap this Christmas present in the proper paper? We don't get hung up on what Uncle Bob is doing for Christmas, because he is where he is. He is doing what he wants to do. I am where I am, and I'm doing what I want to do. And whatever serves him, and whatever serves me, and it doesn't matter if it's the same thing anymore. It doesn't matter the path. None of it matters, because we're all playing. And I only hope for people to live in their true self. And everything that I want to do is to help them help myself. And if I want to turn it around and say, all I want to do is help myself. This journey is helping myself to feel safe, to be my true self, to feel safe enough and feel removed enough, I guess, and to release the conditions on these old stories that I experienced, to realize that they don't matter. The most horrific things could have happened to me when I was 3 or 4 or 5. Guess what? It didn't matter, because I'm here now. Whatever that was, whatever the story, condition, experience that was, that doesn't matter, because I'm not that anymore. That is gone. That is untrue. Because in this moment, that did not happen. And that's where we find those are the complications that create a struggle for balance, is that you're trying to balance 14 stories that are not even happening right now. Which
And they're
is,
usually stories that you created in your own mind that probably are, a lot of it's probably not even, like, it's probably so disconnected from what actually happened.
yeah, there's so many untruths that are in there. This morning, before we were recording this, I had a session, and I was telling this whole story of, the last couple of weeks for me, which was just like essentially an enormous universal lesson of the unchangeable truth, and the releasing of a story that is 30 years in the making. And how quickly, like, I was just so beautiful to see how quickly that story could die when it didn't matter. How quickly that story was just with the birds, and we just didn't care about it anymore. This story that has been like this anchor of my entire existence in this lifetime, right? I had anchored to this story. In 2 days, just flitted away like it didn't even matter. And that's why I have such passion for this idea of, if that story of all the stories could just flit away in my life, right? And that's, for me, the biggest story of my entire lifetime, could just flit away like it did not exist. That's the power of awareness. That's the power of the unchangeable truth. And ultimately that guides you to balance, because you're not hanging on to these truths as if they're gospel. These trying to find the truth or trying to find something different like it's this gospel. It is not. Even the gospel's a story to teach us something, which is to let go. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, the gospel's in the river, right? The flow of life is a river. Like, it's always moving. It's never the same river, right? Goenka teaches this in Vipassana, but that river is always moving. It's always changing. It's always flowing. And what madness it is for us to think that we can stop and control the river. Like, that's not up to us at all. And so it just has to move. It has to keep moving, and to think that we can control it, and that goes back to anything, but especially like what we're talking about with tradition, right? Those traditions are meant to also evolve. Look at all throughout, like, all of our lifetimes, how much tradition has evolved and changed, right? I mean, Christmas was originally a Druid celebration, right? Originally. So, like, really go back and really understand that it doesn't matter. Like, what matters is, how are you sharing your ability to create with your passion? Like, that's it. Like, are you sharing what you create? That's why we're here. We're here on this planet to create, and whatever that means for you, Are you doing it? Are you giving yourself that ability to create? Are you showing others different ways to create? But once you can get to that space that it's okay to like create your own, create new, create something that is more fit for your life and where you want to be, and not so stuck on trying to please a generation that isn't even here anymore.
Yeah. I love also this idea when it comes to stories of asking myself, how is this story serving me? Because at the end
Mhm.
of the day, whether it's true or not, it's serving me somehow. And it may be serving something that I'm just not ready to transform yet. Maybe I need to sit in anger for a little while. Maybe I'm not ready to take these next steps. And the story is serving me to stay in my comfort zone, which, never really serves us for too long. However, having awareness of what that is, hopefully will create enough openness that when you are ready, just like what Jasmine was sharing, we can shed that story like that. And one of my favorite
Yeah.
quotes, sure I've shared this before, is I don't know what the truth is, but I know what love feels like. And I follow that every single time. So whether it's true or not, if that story feels like love towards me, great. If it feels like love towards another person, great. But wherever that constriction exists, if it's not love, it's not truth for me.
Yeah.
Love that.
I feel like we all have these, this is a journey of unlearning and a journey of reconnecting to yourself, and give yourself so much grace and compassion as to wherever you are. Wherever you are, it's okay. And that's also awareness. Like, true awareness is just observing where you are currently, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're attached to a story that's old. It doesn't matter if it took me 30 years to detach from this story. It doesn't matter if it took my parents 60 years to detach from this story. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. When you can sit in awareness, though, then you just are. And it's peaceful. That moment is peaceful, and the things will start to shut off by themselves. So don't get so, I don't know, my best, like, hippie advice, I guess my best advice to finding balance in your life is, don't get so hung up in the stories and the the play that's happening around you. Literally the play. There are people who are playing parts in your life around you. Kids, husbands, parents, work, everyone. Don't get so attached because they're just playing a part and it doesn't matter. It's just supposed to be an experience. And whether you choose to joy, whether they choose to suffer or not, that's their choice, because you can have hardships without suffering. That's their choice. And that's
Yeah.
not for me to decide. And when we stop trying to create balance by spreading out more, and we just come into ourselves and observe what's happening around us, you'll be surprised how quickly you can release a 30-year-old story.
Each day we're born again. Buddha. Each day we're born again. And if like we have that mentality, right? Like every day is a new chance to start over, because you are. You literally are, right? And as we know, life's precious. Like it can end like so fast. And we forget that really quick. And it's just be grateful, like, for every single moment you have to grow, and be okay with the change. Be okay with sometimes being in the shit, right? Sometimes being in that space, because that's, again, it's okay. It's a part of who we are, and it's a part of what makes us better. And it gives us the ability to love more. It gives us the ability to create more, right? And yeah, it's such a beautiful space if we allow it. And that's what we teach. That's what we love to do. That's what we want to share with everybody. And we know the holidays can be hard. We know you could feel really alone and really scared, and you're not sure what's going on and where to go, where to turn, who to help. It starts here. Starts with yourself. So just give a little bit of love back. Give yourself a little bit of time to breathe, a little bit of time to sit with yourself and sit with all the emotions, because what it all comes down to is these emotions tell you everything you need to know, but you just have to listen.
Yeah. And I love so much this idea of playful curiosity and love. Like, that's what we're all here to do. We wanna play all the time, and we wanna feel love all the time, right? But that doesn't mean it's easy. Like, love is hard. Play is
And
hard. Like,
and
yes, we don't want people we love to struggle, but it's not our job to prevent them from struggling. It's our job to demonstrate how to struggle. How can we play through the struggle? How can we find gratitude in the struggle? And that doesn't mean, like, I'm super devout over here and I'm just like, "Oh, no, it's okay." Like, super grateful for my problems. Like, yes, I'm grateful for my problems, and this sucks. Like, this sucks, and this is hard, and let's feel all of the feelings. Let's feel everything that's coming up and hold space for one another, knowing that we are anchored in this connectedness, in this love, in this truth that no matter how crazy things get, this love for one another, this connection that we have together is truly the only thing that matters and will get us through.
Mhm. Amen.
Preach.
Amen. That feels complete. Do you
that
guys
was awesome.
Yeah.
No, I felt great.
Yeah. I I'm just so excited. I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for the podcast. I'm grateful for listeners, and I hope you guys all get a little something something that you need out of this one. And yeah, I hope you guys rest in peace,
Theme for 2025, but alive.
or, whenever,
Wherever you go.
wherever your experience takes you, man.
Wonderful. Till next time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Thank you guys for being here. Love you. Bye.
Love you guys. Thank you.